Good Tuesday to you, everybody. In ComGov 603. Welcome to week boom 9. How is everybody doing? Okay. What am I talking about here? Let's look the last of the morning coffee. All right, that is much better. Here I am now, your sufficiently caffeinated com/gov instructor. I want to talk to you about week 9. We're going to do this week a little bit differently than we have the others. Okay, first things first. This week, today and tomorrow, you will take your midterm exam. But don't take the exam until you watch this video, because in this video, we are going to cover, we're going to review the discussion questions in the material from week 8. So just like all the other questions we reviewed, you'll have that as you go into the exam, because on the exam there is material from week 8. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, I will not post the material for week 9 until tomorrow, Wednesday, October the 16th. And yes, I'll give you an extra day into next week in order to do it, because I want you to focus on the exam, the midterm exam. It's only 100 points. But it covers, everything we've covered so far. Okay. Third, I'm nearly finished grading your papers. That is part number 1. If you got a note from me, please, again, reach out to me. Okay. And, we'll chat. Again, nobody's in trouble. We're here to help each other, to help you grow as researchers and writers and that sort of stuff. Okay. So, make sure that you do that. And likewise, I'm nearly finished with your discussion post. As I said before, as long as you answer the question and then respond to your classmates, I'm going to give you the credit. And when I mean respond, something that sounds more than just a spam email or, hey, that's great, very interesting. It's like, come on, really? You can do a little bit better than that. Okay. So this week, take the exam. Okay. Material for week 9 will be posted tomorrow. All right. Watch to the end of this video, and we're going to try to make it really short because we'll cover the questions. Okay. And, make sure that you get ready on the back side of week 9, because I'll give you a little extra time. Okay. Before I get to the discussion questions, let's turn our attention briefly to the exam. All right. This exam is 25 questions. It's 100 points possible. All right. You can't go backwards. They don't allow that. Once you answer, you answer. But most importantly, this is a closed book, no note, no internet exam. Now, I have mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it one more time. Whenever you're doing something in Canvas, an assignment or a test, Canvas tracks what you do on your system. I didn't set it up that way. That's just the way it works. And then it sends me, as your instructor, a log about what you're doing. When it's time for you to take the test, open it up in Canvas and close all other tabs on your system, on your browser. You should have one tab open, and that's the tab that you're using to take the test. Do not open any other tabs for any reason. Not to check your email, not to listen to your Spotify, nothing. Why? Because Canvas is going to be tracking what you do and sending me a log. And if I see that you're opening other tabs, you're going to risk getting a 0 for the exam because you violated the terms, that is the instructions. And then these instructions, all of them are right at the beginning of the exam in big, bold red letters. Okay. No notes, no internet, no books. Close all of your tabs. All right. Everybody understand that. So there's no confusion. Okay. Very quickly, let's take a look at the questions back from week 8 and see if we can flesh it out just a little bit. All right. Question number 1. What is a t-test and why would a researcher use it? Support your answer with a link to a scholarly article that includes a t-test. Briefly explain what the t-test in the article was used to measure. Okay, so here's the, Jennifer, you're first. We'll take you first. The t-test is a tool for evaluating the means of one or two populations using hypothesis testing. A t-test may be used to evaluate whether a single group differs from a known value, whether two groups differ from each other, or whether there's a significant difference in paired measurement. Okay, that is correct. Let's turn that into English, because you may be required to explain that in plain, straightforward language in a assignment coming up real soon. A wink, meaning your exam. All right, here's what a t-test is and does. And you're going to have to work with me because it's allergy season and I'm having to work with it. Okay. A t-test simply compares the means, the average of either two groups doing the same thing, okay, or the same group doing two different things. Well, what do we mean by that? Let's say, for instance, you have, and I'm just gonna, this is completely hypothetical, okay, that you have a group of men and a group of women, and you time, you have them run a 100-yard dash. Okay, why not? Okay, and then there's 50 in each group, men and women, and you take the time of each group, each member of each group running the 100-yard dash. Okay, and then you plot that on a graph, or you just record the data. Okay. And I'm using my little pad here. And the data comes out, the graphs look something like this. So up top, we have the male, and the bottom, we have the female. On this side, we have the speed, and over here, we have the distance. Okay, now you notice that the average speed for the men gets much faster in the short distance. Okay, they're much, much faster over the short distance. Okay, and then you notice that the average speed for the women, lower curve, is slower over the distance. Okay. Is there any statistically significance to that difference? All right. Or does it happen that in the group of men, there's like Usain Bolt just happened to be hanging around and he got into your study group and he like way tilted the data for the one group? Or is this representative of the population as a whole? Is it true to say that on average, not every single case compared against each other, but on average, men run 100 yards faster than women? Or do the control groups that you look at, you happen to pick a control, the study group, excuse me, you happen to pick a study group of women and they were all in their 50s, and the group of men, they were all in their 20s, which would bias the outcome. It would lopside the outcome. Okay, all a t-test does is tell you if there's any statistically significant, and remember confidence interval, right? That 65, 68, and 90, or whatever it is, 95, 98 percentage outcome. We talked about confidence interval. That tells you if there's something else acting on the outcome other than the thing that you're studying, which in this case, two different groups, the thing that you're studying is running speed. I'll give you another example. Here's how you would use a t-test. People say, oh, and this, and they actually did this. This is a real example. Okay. Back in the 1950s and into the 1960s, there was a lot of data coming forward out of the 40s into the 50s that smoking caused some serious health problems. And one of the health problems they suspected that smoking caused was cancer, but they weren't sure. Okay. So, and they actually use monkeys to do this. It is what it is. So they took these little monkeys. I got a monkey story for you one day. They took these little monkeys and they strapped them down in a lab and they stuck little masks on their face. And in one group of the monkeys, they put a cigarette on the other end. No kidding. And on the other group of the monkeys, no cigarette. So they forced one group of these little monkeys to smoke all day long. And the other group just breathe normally as you would strap to a board in a laboratory. Okay. Yeah. Hideous picture, I know, but this is what happened. All right. I didn't do it. Okay. So the question was, is there a statistically significant difference in the lung health. Oh, and then they killed the monkeys and dissected their lungs. In the lung health of the monkeys who were forced to smoke, who smoked, and the lung health of the monkeys who didn't smoke, on average. So I don't know how many monkeys were subject to this, but let's just say there was 50 of the smoking monkeys and 50 of the non-smoking monkeys. And by the way, the story just gets sadder and sadder. What they found is the monkeys that they forced to smoke, when they took them off of the tables and the little masks off their face, they still wanted to smoke. In other words, ta-da, they had become addicted to the cigarette. All right, but that's not what they were testing for. So they dissected the smoking monkeys and the non-smoking monkeys, and they looked at their lungs, and they said, whoa, hey, what do you know? Now we have the same group, monkeys, okay, doing two different things: smoking, non-smoking. And then they dissected them. They said, whoa, hey, in the smoking monkey, the lungs don't look so good. In fact, we see the early signs of cancer. And in the non-smoking monkey, the lungs look like you would expect monkey lungs to look. All right. So on average, statistically, there was a, and it wasn't like, so you wanted to make sure that within the group of monkeys that you got, that the one group was just had a really high resistance to cancer caused by tobacco, and it skewed the results, or in the non-smoking monkey group that they had, some sort of a genetic disposition towards cancer, and that skewed the results. They took the average to see if there was a statistically significant difference between the outcome of the one group doing two different things, smoking and non-smoking, or two groups doing the same thing, male and female running. That's what you use a t-test for. Now, what a t-test does not do is it doesn't tell you why. Why did the monkeys get cancer? It just tells it. I mean, you can say, well, what do you mean why? They got it from smoking. Well, that's not, I understand that, but it doesn't give you the mechanism as to what is it in the cigarette smoke that causes the cancer. That's not part of what the test tells you. You have to start doing other research to get to that answer, right? But a t-test gives you the answer to the question: is there a statistically significant difference between the average outcome of either two different groups doing the same thing or the same group doing two different things? Remember that. Okay, question number 2. Using the article you cited for question 1, explain what t-test tells us about the relationship between the groups and the phenomenon being measured. So here I want you to get into and break down your citation. Okay, so Jennifer, we'll stick with you. T-tests are relatively robust to deviations for assumptions. T-tests do assumptions that the data are continuous. The sample data must also have been randomly sampled from the population. There must be homogeneity in variance. Finally, the distribution is approximately normal. Okay, excellent. T-tests also tell you this. T-tests will help tell you if what you have is truly a random sample from the population, because remember, if the outcome of a t-test is it is not statistically significant, then there's something going on there. Remember, like the coin flip, you violated the confidence interval. You go, what's the matter here? Okay, good. All right, that's question number 2. Question number 3: explain what an ANOVA is and why a researcher would use an ANOVA. Support your answer with an article. Okay. Let's see. We took you last time. Andrea, let's take you. An ANOVA stands for analysis of variance. Right. That is exactly it. It's an acronym. Analysis of variance is a non-binary hypothesis test which distinguishes from the t-test. They are used to analyze designs experiments to include more than 2 variables. Okay. Let's read a little bit further because we want to translate this into English. One ANOVA test compares functional physical fitness with variables of life, satisfaction, well-being, happiness, resilience, perceived stress. After 8 weeks of 16-week study, variables of life, satisfaction, well-being, stress relieve significant difference when compared to a baseline measurement. Okay, so good answer, Andrea. An ANOVA, which stands for analysis of variance, okay, is like a t-test, except it can measure more than just two variables. So remember, in a t-test, you can only have two variables. That is either one group doing two different things, those are the two variables, smoking monkeys and non-smoking monkeys, or two groups, those are the two different variables, male and female, doing the same thing, running. An ANOVA, analysis of variance, and that acronym ANOVA, or what it stands for, it gives it away as to what it means. A lot of what we do in quantitative and empirical research is we're looking at the difference of the outcome and how it varies from this activity to that activity, or this group to that group. Much of what we know about the world we acquire by way of comparison to outcome. So in many ways, that's kind of how our brains are structured. We're always looking for it to say, okay, this is different compared to what? And actually, it's from that way of looking at the world that we get words like moral. Okay? Moral comes from the Latin word mores, M-O-R-E-S, which means the norm, the established, the baseline. This is the baseline. All right? So when you have behavior that deviates significantly from the baseline, you say that's not moral. And from a Christian worldview, it's particularly interesting because you could say that, some people say, well, how do you know it's a sin? Well, it's not simply a sin because it's a behavior that's prohibited in the Bible. Or for Catholic Christians, it's not simply a sin because it's a behavior prohibited in the Bible, or somebody who lives in a pretty cool city. Rome is a nice town. The traffic, though, is crazy. I've lived and worked there on a couple of occasions, but some guy who lives in Rome says so. No. Something becomes a sin, and that we get that from the Latin word meaning left hand, sinistra. This is my left hand. See, that's where my wedding ring is. This is my right hand. This is where my other ring is. We get it from left hand, sinistra. That doesn't mean people who are left-handed are sinister. Okay, it's from the Gospel of Matthew, meaning separated out onto the left and the right. Those who serve the king well go to the right, and those who didn't go to the left. Okay, so that's where we get the word sin. Something is a sin because it significantly deviates from the norm, the moral, the mores. It's not normal. All right, little etymology, a little word history for you. Okay, but back to ANOVA. So we're always looking for variance. Okay, how does the outcome vary between this and this? So excellent answer, Andrea. So you can compare multiple variables with an ANOVA. Now, often ANOVA can be used to just compare two variables, and you get a little deeper by way of comparison. We're going to, in week 9, I'm going to introduce you to a test that's related to the ANOVA that goes beyond the t-test, in that not only will it tell you if there's a significant difference statistically between this activity and that activity, the outcome, but it's going to give you a score, a percentage score of causation, meaning what caused the outcome, which ultimately, remember, as empirical researchers, that's what we want. The reason we're interested in things like ANOVA tests and t-tests is we want to see the effect of one variable on another, on forcing a monkey to smoke and giving the monkey cancer, on gender and running speed. That's what researchers do. Okay. All right. So yes, good answer, Andrea. It gives you, that question, is there a statistically significant difference in the outcome for multiple variables? So in the case that you're citing, and from the article that you have, that is for those who have a level of functional physical fitness and defined by, do they report higher life satisfaction? Okay. Do they report higher levels of well-being? Do they report higher levels of being relieved from stress, and that is feeling less stressed, as compared to those who don't exercise? All right, that's an ANOVA. Question number 4. Using the article you cited for question 1, explain what the ANOVA tells us about the relationship between the groups and the phenomenon being measured. Okay, so here again, I want you to be able to analyze the study that you cited. So we'll go back to you, Andrea. The relationship between exercise has a positive and direct impact on factors including well-being, life satisfaction, happiness, resilience, and perceived stress. Now, again, as we'll talk about in week 9, ANOVA and its close cousin, there's another test, will give you a percentage, not everything, but it'll give you a percentage of causation, saying, okay, based on the test that we run, we can say with a level of confidence that this percentage of the outcome, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% was caused by this thing, which is ultimately what we want. Okay, but back to you, Andrea. Over 16 weeks experiments, 3 factors significantly were impacted, demonstrating high levels of variance compared to baseline in just 8 weeks. These were life satisfaction, well-being, and stress level. Okay, so in other words, I wanted you to get into the data and be able to tell me what it's saying about the difference in the difference in the averaged outcome of the thing being studied. So averaged outcome of men and women running. Let's say that so in addition to the t-test, we say, okay, gender wise, we can see that men on average run faster than women. Okay, great. So what if we ran an ANOVA and said, what about if people who regularly train to run a 100-yard dash, is there anything else that on average is different? To say, now we'll switch from 2 different groups doing the same thing, men and women running. So let's take those 2 groups and combine them. Now we have both men and women running. And let's compare those who run with those who don't. And ask, do they have lower levels of stress on average? So we would come up with a test to measure stress, or say blood pressure or glucose levels in their blood. Okay, we'd come up with a test and we could measure their blood pressure over so many weeks of training to run that 100-yard dash, and they're consistently training. And then we would take a group, roughly the same, equal, in terms of age and gender mix. So we've got 50 men and 50 women in this other group, the running group. And we'd take a group of 50 men and 50 women of roughly the same age and the same lifestyle. So you got to be careful, like you don't want a bunch of smokers over here and then everybody who's running are non-smokers. All right. And then we would track their blood pressure over the same amount of time. So let's say they're training to run the 100-yard dash over 8 weeks, and these guys are doing absolutely nothing over 8 weeks. And we would compare the average blood pressure between the 2 groups. And then we would ask them questions about, how do you feel when you get up in the morning? How do you feel at the end of the day? How would you rate your level of tiredness? And you might be saying, a lot of this sounds very subjective. Actually, a lot of how we navigate through life and communicate with each other is highly subjective. That is, it's an expression of how we perceive what's going on with us. But here's the thing. Now, perception does not alter reality. Okay. You can stand on a diving board on a very hot summer day with a blindfold and imagine how wonderful it will feel when you splash into the cool water that waits just a few feet below you and go, I'm really going to enjoy this. And then when you jump, if the swimming pool is empty, you're still going to break your leg on the concrete bottom. All right. So imagining an outcome does not create the outcome. All right. That's a physical reality. Okay. But how one perceives, say, I feel tired, I feel stressed, does create one's behavior, which tends to drive one towards certain outcomes, meaning, I really don't like getting wet, and so I won't go to a swimming pool. And I'm like, okay, so you sit around in the summer and you bake, or you stay inside where it's air conditioning and you don't get any exercise. So how you perceive can drive the outcome that affects you, but it doesn't change the reality of the circumstances of the outcome. Do you understand the difference there? It's very important in the social sciences, okay? And this is very true in politics. So You might say, well, it sounds very subjective. Well, it is, and there's an important reason for that. Okay, but remember, and this is fundamental to empirical research. Perception does not alter reality. Perception can drive outcome. Sort of like a choose your own ending storybook. Okay, you can choose to exercise or you can choose to not, and then you're likely to veer towards one ending or another. All right. So perception does not change reality. Perception will set the individual on a path towards a given reality. Okay. So everybody understand now what a t-test is, what an ANOVA is, and how you use it, right? All right, everybody. Good luck with the final exam. I'm thinking about you. I am praying for you. And come tomorrow, Wednesday, I will post the material for week 9. All right, everybody, take care. God bless. Bye-bye.